All right, here we are. This week's episode, we're talking about 10 tips to help you win football games. A new series we're doing. I have 10 different weeks, 10 different tips. Hopefully help you get a little something out of each one. Me and Chad and Michael here to talk about different things we've learned over the years, and we'll have some guests in and out on this series. But today you just get us. How about that, guys?
I don't know if that's good or bad, but here we are.
Here we are. So 10 things to help you win football games. Now, what we did was I really sat down, and where this came from was I was asked to speak at a few clinics this year. Well, I'm not coaching, and nobody wants to hear about my offense when I didn't run it this year, and nobody wants to hear about different things I've done in planning practice when I didn't plan any practices this year, but they did ask me to speak. So I started thinking, what are some things that helped us win the football game? What really, because we try to be about real talk here. So came up with this list, and then it kind of grew and grew and grew. It kind of turned into a project. And then I was really happy with what we came up with, and then said, well, instead of just talking about it for an hour, which is what I did at a couple clinics, let's expand on each one of these and have a little longer talk. So hopefully people can get stuff out of it. So these are the 10 tips we use to help win football games. The first one, chart efficiency. You may say, well, what does that mean? Well, think of this more as the self-scout tip. Okay. Think of this as the self-scout tip. Really, these first two tips are probably self-scout. So that should tell you what my thoughts are on how to win football games. But the first two tips are revolving around self-scouting. But the first tip, chart efficiency. And let me tell you guys what that means, and then you guys expand on that as we go. So what we wanted to do when we charted efficiency was we're going to come up with a column in Huddle or whatever you use. And basically all I did was type in yes or no in every play. So if we ran 150 plays in the game, I was going to type yes or no in those 150 plays. And what I've found is yards per play is one of the most deceiving statistics for people trying to self-scout. So you would get a play, and Chad knows we would run counter or something like that on the goal line because we had a big old quarterback, and we just run counter and let him hammer it in there. And so you pull up your self-scout, and counter's averaging 2.8 yards a play. You're like, man, that's awful. Jet sweep averaging 8 yards a play, and keep pass averaging 12 yards a play or something like that. Well, the reason it averaged 3 yards a play is because you only called it on 3rd and 1. So it may have ended up being a really efficient play, but not necessarily high yards per play. Whereas a play like keep pass, you may only hit on half of them, but the half you hit are really good. So let me back up and explain what I mean by having this yes/no column. So we're going to have a column. We're just going to type yes or no in every one. Was it a good play? Yes or no. So think of efficiency like that. That's a fancy way to say, was it a good play? Yes or no. On offense, this is what I used. And you come up with your own criteria. But on offense, if the play got 4 or more yards on first or second down, then it was a yes. So if we threw an incompletion, that's a no. We ran buck sweep, gained 5 yards, that's a yes. On 3rd or 4th down, it had to convert. So if on 3rd and 1, we gain 1, that's a plus. That's a yes. That's a hell yeah. Even if it's only a 1-yard gain. And in 3rd and 21, if we gain 16, that's a no. That play wasn't good enough. And what you do when you do that over the course of the whole game, of course, every touchdown you would count. But if you fumble, say about this, Chad, we did some of these, we get loose, gain 17 yards and fumbled. That's a no. But on the yards per play, that's going to look like 17. So you kind of start figuring out what play. So now I'm going to take all them offensive plays and I'm going to chart them. Just put yes or no. Literally takes maybe 10 minutes. Probably not even that if you know what you're doing. Then I'm going to pull up all the buck sweeps. And I want to know, I definitely want to know what the yard per play is. And I want to know how we're doing against it. But my main thing to look at was it efficient? Yes or no. So now to put this in perspective, to people understand is about 60% is good. There's not a guarantee rule on this, by the way. So don't hold me to that number. But meaning if you picked out for us, it was buck sweep, or if you pick out your inside zone or your power or whatever the play is that you feel like that's your deal, you need to be efficient on about 60% of them. So everyone that gained first and 10, you call it, gain 2 yards, a 2nd and 8. That's a no. First and 10, you call it, you gain 6 yards, 2nd and 4. That's a yes. You need 60% of those plays probably to feel like we're doing a pretty good job. But you would be surprised how when you put that efficiency beside a certain formation or beside a personnel group or beside, add another column to it, how it would tell you a lot of things. So then on defense, it would be the opposite. So on defense, you're looking at, did they gain 4 more yards on first, second down? If they did, that's a no now instead of a yes. And then same thing on 3rd and 4th down. If we stopped them from converting, that's a yes. If they converted, that's a no. And if we got them to turn the ball over, that's a yes. So before we can get into special teams, because I've talked a lot, what comes to mind that you can expand on that, Chad?
Well, for me, I know, and Chris used to, is one of the things that I focused on. If you're an old fat offensive line coach, what I would look at is efficiency versus fronts, and it would really concern plays. So we came to over time to know that these plays were really good versus odds. Even, discredit if the players were way better than ours in the front, because it didn't really damn matter what we did then if the players were just way better.
Right.
But we came to find out these are a good set of plays we always work versus this front. And so we just knew that the efficiency typically went up when we faced even fronts. We were going to run more zone style stuff, and odd fronts, we wanted a lot of gap style stuff.
Yeah.
That was what we, as O-line coach, I found to be hugely effective.
Well, and I made references before, but these tips come from logic, okay? Not feelings, not our gut instinct, some logical
Correct.
stuff that we learned that we're saying, we're going to give you this tip. I'm pretty sure Michael and Chad and I have coached our last down. So I want people to know this stuff. Why not? But I think one of the things that coaches are notoriously bad at is seeing what they want to see. And so they get on that film and they think, damn, this play is good. And then they find 3 or 4 things that prove it's good. You know what I mean? They find the couple times it worked against the bad team or whatever. If you chart that efficiency and you match it, and Chad mentioned the front, you can chart it by the front. How did, not just what was our buck sweep yards per play versus odd and even, what percent was efficient? And you may see one's like 82% and the other one's 48, something like that. And you're like, whoa, that's a problem. Because now if it was 6.2 yards a carry and 5.1 yards a carry, you may not see that as a big discrepancy because you pop 180 yarder, you pop 150 yarder. But the truth is 7 out of the 10 plays have been bad. You just pop one long run and it made it look like they're kind of the same. And then you have another formation where you never really pop a long one, but it's like 8 out of 10 plays are good. You need to call that some more. This is a huge thing if people are understanding, because it's a podcast and, we're not at a clinic. I don't know. I hope everybody's hearing this as I'm explaining it. I hope I'm painting the picture correctly for you. But if you can embrace that and understand the concept of it, you will get a lot of data to help your team.
Right.
We're going to talk about several tips. Go ahead, Chad.
Well, I think one of the things that you learned over time that I remember hearing you say is you really were kind of evolving into this yes, no sort of thing, was that you really started saying, damn, why did we not call that more? The more you started looking at it over time. And that was really how you spun to all of this eventually. And one other factor that came into play was, and I know it seems very elementary, but it's what you talked about, Chris, with people doing. So see, sometimes there's kids that you coach that might annoy the hell out of you. They might drive you crazy. They may not show up over here this time, but every time this joker touches the ball for some reason, it's efficient then.
Oh, you can do efficiency by ball carrier. Yeah, absolutely. You can do efficiency first off, you just got to get that yes, no column.
Right.
Then you can sort it by anything. But just so many people, I guess the thing that came to me was and maybe it was because of what we did on offense, and I'm talking about offense now, but I guess it happened on defense too. We had so many big plays that it was hard to self-scout sometimes, because if we would do these weird formations, get somebody wide open, throw a tight end seam for 68 yards, And then it looks for the rest of the year like tight it, like the verticals out of that formation is unbelievably good. The truth is we literally threw one good ball. And then there's other plays, like I said, I used counter because that was a real thing where I was kind of down on the play till I started doing it this way. And you started saying, that play really gets the job done more than we're giving it credit for. It just never pops.
Right.
And so if you call a play, I'll give you another one. And then I'm going to ask Michael to talk a little more about defense. But I'll give you another one is like, say you run a comeback on 3rd and long. It's 3rd and long and you like a comeback or like mesh. Something. You got a play you like. And let's say it's 3rd and 8 or 9 or more. Well, that comeback, I mean, if you've called that thing 8 times and it's only worked once, that's a problem. But if you just look at your yards gained or whatever your typical kind of self-scout is, you may not be able to so quickly say, we called 8 comebacks and we got 7 first downs, or we called 8 comebacks and we got 2 first downs. We called 8 comebacks, we got 3. You see what I mean? If you do it this way, it's pretty damn easy to see, did it convert? You sort it by down. These are all the 3rd downs. If it's a yes, that means we converted. So what play are we converting 3rd downs on? Not just what one got yards, or because maybe the quarterback scrambled, got loose for 9 yards and got a first down, or maybe better yet, 20 or 30 yards. And that's the only time that play ever worked in 3 weeks, but it kind of just skews the thing. So I think I've beaten that horse to death of people understanding that point. But the opposite is true on offense and defense. And I've used a lot of offensive examples, but it doesn't change. I scouted this way equally on offense and defense. So what would you have to add to that, Michael, especially more from a defense perspective?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the evolution of football. When we first started coaching, there was a lot of offenses. It was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And so the efficiency wasn't necessarily a thing. They were just trying to get 3 yards every play. And to steal a baseball term, this is very much like analytics. It has slowly turned into, like, on defense, it's all about stops. It's all about getting them off the field. Doesn't matter when you get them off the field, you just get them off the field. You got to win 3rd downs. You got to win 4th downs. The biggest things that we always did those stats that win. So we had a list of things that we determined, like, when we win these things, we win the game more often. We win more than the other team. And you talked about the goal was to shoot for say. If you're hitting 60 and 65% of your plays being efficient, then the opposite is true for the other side. So if on defense, if you're 65% efficient of holding them to 3 yards or less on 1st down, about getting them off the field, then that means they're in that 35% range of being efficient. So you're obviously
keep in mind that incompletion is inefficient. So
correct,
Michael, if they overthrew a guy wide ass open, see, this is another thing coaches make mistakes on.
Well, it was not necessarily a good play on defense, but it was efficient. Right.
What did Herm Edwards say? You play to win the game. If you complete the pass and it was nothing you did, the kid made a great play, then we count that for damn sure. So the opposite should be said when they overthrow a guy. That's a plus for us. It's a lucky plus,
right?
But it's a plus. Right. Okay. So remember, we got a whole nother, we got 10 of these, by the way. So we're going to talk plenty about smart football and how to hold your kids accountable. And so I'm not trying to take away from playing to a standard or anything like that. This is just talking about efficiency. You need to know what plays are working and what is not. For a defensive coach like how Michael was, you self-scout your self-scout. I mean, you want to know how is power working on us, how's what, but you also want to know if I called this blitz, how often is it getting some out the field? Maybe you only called us on 3rd down and you say, how often is this working? Because we have some great blitzes that just sometimes took forever to get in. So we can only call them on 3rd and longs and stuff like that. So you could pretty easily set to know if they work. Same deal. If we called 8 of them and it had a 1 out of 8 efficient, then that blitz sucks. Quit calling it. Even if it looks good in practice, even if we hit the quarterback or so, if it's 6 out of 8, you're like, that's pretty good. Right. So I just felt like it gave us, and here's the thing about the analytics, because I do agree this is kind of where it is, but let's not overcomplicate something. We got a column of words, yes and no.
Right.
But I mean, I
that-
think people hear
that's
some of
and
the,
that's your version. I think everybody has to take this to their own thing. Like these are the things.
these are
that
my
you
tips,
use.
damn it. We're going to say it how I did
Sorry,
it.
but you are. It is okay to take. Don't have to reinvent the wheel. Take these things and you have to turn it into what's successful for you.
Some people use
Yes,
ones
but-
and zeros.
But in the
That's
in
true.
the
That's true.
in the vein for efficiency here, or the argument, I think what Chris has put forth is this is efficient.
Correct.
Like this is an efficient way to get it done. Yes or damn no.
Mhm.
Well,
In that, I know that I'm being kind of hokey, but it's true.
Well, no, that's what I wanted to make. The point I wanted to make was I think some people hear the word analytics and some people take that to the nth degree and make a big deal about it and
Mhm.
go overboard. And then other people are terrified by that word. Like
Yes.
they want to just play. What I'm saying is I made a yes or no column. If that is analytics, then yes, I did some analytics. But if you're hearing this and thinking, I don't know about all that fancy shit, like we made a yes or no column. Okay. Like we still taught tackling and blocking and all that first.
Just
Stop trying
as
to fancy
as
it
you
up,
want to make
Michael. Stop trying to fancy it up.
It's as
Yeah.
fancy as you want to make
Yeah,
it.
don't. But that's the joking part of the show. But I do want people to know that I put this first on purpose because I wanted to grab folks' understanding of we got some decent stuff to help you, and I think this is one of them. You don't have to make this exact column, and you also don't have to say. You may say, for us it's 5 yards, or for us it's if it's incomplete that didn't count. I don't care. That's up for you.
And
Come up with some
depending on what
parameters.
kind of
Yeah. Go ahead,
offense or
Mike.
defense you run, like say you're gonna adapt it to you. But for what you were doing, this was what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Some people are still in that 3 yards in a cloud of dust phase, so they have a different approach.
Well, I would
Some
say
people
this.
are not punting on 4th down, so that 3rd down number don't matter to them. But
Right.
you got to do what works for you.
Well, and I would say this, if you're hearing all this and you're like, yeah, that's all right, but I don't know about it. At least you need to chart every 3rd and 4th down. And by 4th downs, I mean every 3rd and 4th down where they went for.
Right. When they're playing.
You need to chart those because those are really simple. I feel like that's pretty universal. Ain't no debating on that. You either got the 1st down or you didn't.
Did you get them off
Now,
the field or not?
What's a good 1st or 2nd down play? You got to think of somebody like somebody that throws the ball, air raid type team that throws it all over the place. You realize their efficiency numbers are going to be lower because they're going to throw a lot of incompletions. A team that runs a wing T under center, their efficiency numbers will be higher on 1st, 2nd down because they never throw incompletion. So I'm not trying to, I'll play the devil's advocate here and give the rebuttal. I'm not saying this is a foolproof plan, but it's a foolproof plan on 3rd and 4th down. Like there's not but really one way to do that. You either got the 1st down or you didn't, no matter if you're running or the spread or whatever. So I just thought it was an extra column. I don't think this should replace any other columns you got. I don't think it should replace any self-scouting you're currently doing. I think it should add to it.
Right.
Sort by efficiency and something. So I'm going to come back to this, but because I want to talk about special teams, but you want to look at it like, what's the formation? We have a formation, brown, black, green, gold. That's how we called formations by color. So the formation, yes, 66%, no, 34%. That's how you want to go down. Then you get into the play, same way, your jet sweep, efficient, yes or no. And so what you see is like, if you looked at ours, you'd see that the keep pass is 50-50. And I said 60 was good. So you say, well, keep pass, maybe not so good. Well, but there's a lot of incompletions, but damn, when it hits, it's a good one. So don't throw it out because you want to mix it with explosives, which we're going to get to in a second. But let's talk about special teams for a second. I made a list of what we considered efficiency on special teams, but it's open for debate. But I would do the same thing on special teams. An efficient play, a yes or no. So if we're kicking off, and Michael talked about our stats that win stuff, which we're going to talk about later in this series, not later today, but later on in this 10-part series. But we wanted to start better field position than our opponent. We wanted to have a net punt better than our opponent. So this is all in the vein of that. But the numbers we came up with for us was starting less than the 30 on kickoff. So if we kicked off to them and they started on the 26-yard line minus, we said plus. If they started on the 35 or the 40, minus. So if you kick it in the end zone, it's always a plus. We got anything to add on kickoff before I go to the next one?
2 pluses for that touchback.
Kick
Well,
it in
there's
the end
only
zone.
one plus. Don't confuse them, Flatt. You don't confuse them with that doctor. But is that about right, Michael? About the 30,
Yeah, I mean,
about where you can kind
yeah.
of start saying, and you make it say the 35 because some people pop the ball up. You know, if you're one of these
Well, I
teams,
said that is definitely one that you're
Yes.
gonna
Exactly.
depending on what you have. If you got a kid that can kick in the end zone, then it's different. If you're
Correct.
starting in the 30s, a good fit. If you got a guy that if you have no kicker and you're just doing the best you can, then your number is going to be different on that for you to consider it efficient. But there's still something has to be. You still have to have a mark that you're shooting for.
Yeah,
and it may be we got them to fair catch it. They fair catch it. That's sufficient for us. You know.
And this self scouting is not like offensive defense because it's not really about what we're going to call next week. Most teams have got their 1 or 2 kickoff schemes, but it's about is this work? Is this really working? Or are we just seeing it how we want to see it?
Right.
You know, like what percent of the time are we really reaching the goal? Kick return, I'd say the opposite. So we try to balance these. So for kick return, we wanted to start on their side of the 30. Let me make this clear at this point. Don't come up with some unrealistic junk. Like don't say kickoff is good if we start inside the 21, but kick return is only good if we start past the 40. Like that's not realistic. It's a yes or no. This is a yes or no column. So whatever you think the break mark is on kickoff, that same thing should be on kick return, just the other side, just like offense defense. Punt, net 35. That's all I thought. That one I stayed pretty true to over the years. Some of the other stuff kind of fluctuated as I learned more, but net 35 is what we wanted. I didn't care if we punted 35 yards, no return. That was fine with me. I didn't care. We'd have to punt it 50 yards. 35, no return was perfect. Now, y'all, I'm not going to insult people's intelligence, but for the people that may be scared to ask, net punt means if you punt at 50 and they return at 20, that's a net of 30. And nobody give a damn that you punted at 50 yards. That didn't help the team one bit if they started 30 yards from where the last ball was snapped. So wherever the ball was snapped when they punted, however many yards it is forward, that's the net. And if it was 35, we said that was a yes. If it was under 35, that was a no. And punt return, same way. And we won a lot of games in part because our net punt was way better than theirs. Like we tried to catch punts. We tried to do stuff with punt to take every yard, and we made a big deal with it with the kids. Extra point, field goal, a little harder to come up with. If it's
this
good.
is the definition of yes or no.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have
If you made it, it's a yes. If you missed it, it's a no.
I don't know that it matters much with those teams. But with kickoff and punt, I would do it because I think you guys would be surprised how many punts are not as good as you think they are, or your punt team's way better than you think it is.
Right.
You know, but give yourself that barrier and try to hit that 50, 60% mark pretty easily, you know, and give yourself
those are the biggest hidden yards in all of football are on those 2 teams, on kickoff and punt. So I mean, if you win those are as big of stats that win as almost anything. You know, like if your net punt is 40 and the other team is 20, that's huge different. Every time you're switching the ball over, you're gaining 20 yards. So that's huge.
That's right. So the second thing I would do to chart, I said the topic's chart efficiency, but a piece of that is we charted explosive plays too. Because I do feel like, and I know people, any tips on football tell you explosive plays are the deal, man. That's what it is. So why does this fit into this tip, you say? Well, I said 60% was a good number, right? If you charted explosive plays, meaning a second yes, no column. So let me make sure that's clear. We got a efficient yes or no column, an explosive yes or no column. Now we got this play we call that it's only 28% efficient, but it's 50% explosive, you know, or it's something like maybe when we get it, when it goes. So it's worth the gamble. And I've already given away the lead on this to some degree, because the best example is like a keep pass, a home run type post, throwing a fade, for example. Like throwing a fade in the end, it's going to be low percentage, you know, best 50-50. But how many of these balls are caught for 20, 30, 40 yard gains? If that number's high, you can't throw that play out. This is you need to chart this for the exception to the rule, if that makes sense. Like if every time Michael called this certain blitz, it only worked 40% of the time. But of those 40%, most of them were turnovers. Like they threw a pick or they got strip sacked or whatever. We need to call that some more. So now my yes, no column isn't fancy enough. So this is where I would now, most people are charting explosive plays. So this isn't earth shattering, but it may be earth shattering to put it with the yes, no thing and to match it, cross reference, whatever with the efficiency. So now we can debate this, and I don't really want to debate this for long because it really doesn't matter. But some people want to determine is 15 yards or 12 yards.
Yeah, but that's a debatable up there. Everybody's their own person.
Now, what I did was I thought everything. I never understood. I get on a soapbox, even though I said I wouldn't. I never understood people having a different run pass one, like 12 yards for run, but 16 for pass. Like, they ain't no extra points for damn how you got 16 yards. Like, it's explosive or it's not. So my thought was if it was 12 yards, it was explosive. So I just charted any play that gained 12 yards. Some people do 10 because first down, most cases. So some people might do 15, 20. I'm not ready to go there. I don't care. But pick a number, and it's either explosive or it's not. And then do the same thing on defense because you want that number low. Like, is there a certain front you call that even though that front, like say you call an under front and then the under front, it's like 58% efficient. That's pretty decent. But when you call the over front, it's only like 48% efficient, but we give up way less bigger plays here. Like for whatever reason, they never get the big plays in this front. That matters. So you do need both of these numbers probably. I think the efficiency is probably more important for making your game plan, but you really don't throw stuff out that's showing up nice on this list. But I like charting them on special teams too. Pretty easy. You don't get many explosive plays on special teams, but it is nice to know a block punt, big punt return, didn't have to be a touchdown, but give yourself a parameter like kickoff. If we can make them start inside the 20. So not even a touchback, like, inside the 20. If you kick return, you start on the 50, that's an explosive play. Net punt of 45, 50 yards, punt return that maybe had a net punt of less than 25 for them. If we could get 20 yards from where they punted, that was an explosive play for us. So you might even say, well, they punted the thing out of bounds. Would that be an explosive play? Yeah, absolutely. Remember, Herm Edwards said, we play to win the game. So if they punt that thing out of bounds, we're going to take the ball there. We're not going to feel bad about it. So yeah, it counts. Just as good as if your guy returned it all the way to there. Like, because remember, this is just about figuring out what's working and what's not and what. So you got to go ahead, Chad.
No, I'm sorry. I was not.
Oh, I thought you had.
I was literally clearing my throat. I'm sorry.
He's adding to the ambiance of this soliloquy I'm on. So, I was done. Do you have anything, or Michael, to add to that with explosive plays?
No, I want to go back to something we did with the efficiency later. Though I didn't say it. I've thought about, but I want to go back to that. So no, not right now. What are you gonna say, Theo?
When you were talking a minute ago about not having like the outrageous things on special teams, this is more what you were shooting for. Yes, you can. If you want it to be your goal to start on the 50, that's fine, but that's not necessarily what makes it efficient.
That's not efficiency.
Explosive, correct.
Efficiency.
So this is more of that focus on that.
The efficiency needs to be a baseline, a realistic baseline, not some pie in the sky thing that you say, well, we're not going to do it unless we, nobody wants to hear all that. What's the real talk of what you think can work and what can't? So you chart the explosives, chart the efficiency, and you kind of see the same thing. So like I said, you look at a play like our jet sweep or buck sweep. Like for us, buck sweep and jet sweep were probably equally efficient, meaning good plays, but the buck sweep went for way longer plays. There was way more explosive plays in buck sweep. I'm not even entirely sure why that is, but it was a fact. It happened over and over and over again. So it wasn't an aberration. It was something that happened. So you'll just pick up on some things that you can use. Then what we're going to do, and this is kind of the grand finale of this, having a plan for efficiency. What you're going to do is you're going to take and this is going to be a teaser for next week too. You're going to take all those plays. You're going to chart them, yes or no. Then you're going to take all them yeses and don't worry about them no more because they work. Okay? Just watch the bads. I'm going to make another column that said, why was this bad? Why was it a no? And what you're going to find is that pretty much every play fits into three things. Somebody got beat that was fixable. They stepped with the wrong foot. They didn't get their head here. They didn't do this on defense. They didn't punch. They did, they didn't set the edge. They didn't whatever, they took a bad angle, like something that you can fix. That's column one, or that's, not column one. It's a whole column. That is the first option of why you might have given a no. The second option is somebody got beat, but it's not fixable. Let's just call it a spade a spade. We talk about high school ball. Sometimes the guy's going to Georgia and our guys, not going.
Not.
So, the guy got picked up, walked down the field. And you don't have any tip on how to tell him to do better.
Got a tip. Get some water, boys.
Now, I think it's important. And then the third one, and I'll come back to that, but the third one is a bad play call. And I think it's important at this moment. You're listening to this, you want to get better. We're coming up with tips to help you. Chart efficiency, list out your explosive plays so you can get a little something out of that. And then take all them no's and you be real with yourself. This is something coaches struggle with. Be real with yourself on which of these three things it is. Was it fixable? Is it really not fixable? The kid did the best he could. He just ain't any good. Or was it your fault? Because let's say sometimes it's your fault. Now, let me tell you from my experience, let's say the game, let's use round numbers, and let's say the game had 100 plays, and let's say we played pretty well. So maybe there's only 40 no's in that 100 plays. Of those 40 no's, there's probably 5 bad play calls. Like, it's not equal. There's probably 5 that you're like, we ran over there and they got one too many that we can block. Let's just be real. Let's not blame this kid because of something tiny we came up with. The truth is they had 2 guys out there and we had 1 guy pulling in the alley for them. The somebody got beat not fixable, meaning we just got our ass whipped. There might be 5 of those. Okay. So just to put it in perspective, in this this made up game of 100 plays, you're talking about probably 20 to 30 somebody got beat fixables, right? That's what we're going to talk about next time. Because basically you're going to use an accountability system. Tip 2 is have an accountability system. We'll give a little teaser. That's how they do it in the production business. Flat, I'm learning. But also you can buy my book on Amazon. No, but
that's the next slide.
I do want people to understand that you take those no's that are fixable. Don't harp on the ones that weren't fixable. Don't harp on the ones where you caught a bad play because, just don't call it next time. Don't get on the kids about that. And don't harp on the ones where the guy from Georgia walked him down the field. Take that other group. And that's what we're going to talk about showing the players how to grade, how to hold them accountable on Monday at practice. And that's what next week is going to really be about. So what y'all got to add to that?
Well, that's kind of when you talked about those 20 or 30 that are fixable. That's where the efficiency column is most important from what happens thereafter, not even just calling plays. We have to really work to get better at this because we're going to need this play to help us win later. Like you talked about, I'm going to use your example of the comebacks, Chris. Like we're going to need that play to work later. So what are we not coaching well on it? There's a lot of little things you can pick up from that. And that's how you figure out what our focus needs to be on times that later in the year you're going to have.
That's right. And that's some of the reason we do the yes and no's and then get to that analyzing the bad plays, put them in those 3 columns, pick out the no. If you see a pattern, that's where you can see a pattern too. Like if literally every time you call blank, it's a no. And the reason it's a no is the left guard something, and this is fixable. now there's some data on maybe changing left guards.
Mhm.
Not just this feeling that you got upset because you saw one time he got his ass whooped and you're mad about it and you don't like him anyway and whatever. There's some data on why this left guard's got to go, or we got to try something different.
I think it shows you what you should be working on too. Like you say, it's telling you like this is the stuff we should be working on in practice.
Correct.
If this is the issue, like if we're getting beat because of the same thing over and over, then we're not probably doing a good enough job. This kid doesn't understand what to do, or they don't understand the concept that we're trying to work. We need to take a period in practice this week and focus on doing this
Mhm.
if we're going to keep running this play,
Right.
keep running this for concept, whatever.
It's an advancement of the same thing. So the first thing is you put the yes, no columns and you just see is buck sweep working, yes or no. Then you take all the no's of buck sweep and you say, why did it get stopped? What actually stopped the play? What you see is it might be the left guard, but it also might be something weird. Like it's the same thing, like the down blocks, the play side down blocks got us every time we've gotten stopped.
Mhm.
It's been the same thing or 9 out of 10 or something. That's something you got to fix. I mean, now we're getting real talk on coaching, not this, I saw on Twitter stuff, although it's okay to look at my Twitter, but I mean the other one. But but you know what I mean? Like that's something that I just, people ask me all the time for years when I was coaching, what did we do? We had the bad, Chapel Hill was really bad. And then we got there and they got really good. And then Pickens was bad. And we got there, they got good. And there's a lot of reasons why that happens. Okay, guys. And it's not, it's only, we had a little something to do with it, but it's not what people think it is always. We had some good players. But I do think I had a hard time explaining to people 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or hell, even a year ago, maybe, when people asked me what we were doing maybe that was working for us that allowed these teams to get better. And now that I have been doing it for a little bit and I've had to think about stuff, it's things like this. It's these 10. It's not just these 10 things, but it's some of them, that finding ways to sort through what was real and what wasn't was something we did better than other people, I thought, or at least some people, not everybody, but better than some people, and gave us an edge. And so it does make me happy that now I can answer that question, because I struggled sometimes to answer that question, not because I didn't want to, but because I just couldn't really articulate what it was that I thought, because I didn't know what anybody else was doing. But I really think this first tip is helpful. So I hope people get something out of it and it'll help your team, see what you can do. So you guys got anything else on tip 1, chart efficiency?
Come back next week.
You heard it from Michael, bringing that passion.
Right.
So next
Very
week,
good, Michael.
what we are going to talk about next week, so people know, and we'll go, is that accountability system of how we're going to hold kids accountable after the game on Monday, how we're going to grade them, how we're going to do that thing to start into the next week. So really these first 2 are both about self-scout grading type stuff. And then we'll get into the other stuff. So hopefully, this is weird because this is where Michael's going to play that music. And then we're going to come on again and Flatt's going to say how great of a guest I was. Is that what we're going to do?
Probably
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. Here we go. Play the music, Michael.